Welcome to the Confessions Podcast. I'm Cindy Wagman.
And I'm Jess Campbell. We're two former in-house nonprofit pros turned coaches and consultants to purpose-driven organizations.
After years of building up our separate six-figure businesses from scratch, we've thrown a lot of spaghetti at the wall and have lived to see what sticks.
We're on a mission to help other nonprofit coaches and consultants looking to start or scale their own businesses past the six-figure mark by pulling back the curtain.
Whether you're still working inside a nonprofit and thinking of one day going out on your own, or you've been running your consulting business for years, you understand that working with nonprofits is just different. We're giving you access to the business leaders who serve nonprofits as their clients. You know, the people who truly get it.
No more gatekeeping, no more secrets. This podcast is going to give you an inside look at what running a successful nonprofit coaching and consulting business looks like. Basically, we're asking people how much money they make, how they get paid, and what has and hasn't worked in their businesses.
Listen in as these leaders share their insights, their numbers, and the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to building a nonprofit coaching or consulting business. We're going to empower you to make the power moves that give you the income and freedom you set out to create from day one.
You ready? Let's go.
Hey, Jess.
Hi, Cindy. We're back.
We're back, and today's conversation is such a good one.
Needed one.
But yeah, this one, we're talking about sales and mindset. And like, if you need anything in your business, you need to know how to make money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a requirement. And something that, as we talk about in the conversation, doesn't necessarily come super natural to anyone who identifies as female, anyone who's been brought up in the nonprofit sector. These are things that we really have to overcome. And I know personally in my business, it definitely is felt harder to sell myself compared to raising the millions of dollars I've raised as a fundraiser. So this is everyone.
This is foundational. And you are not alone. Everyone I talk to feels that way. And it's scary and uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to be. Right. And what I love about this conversation is Erin approaches sales as service, which you've heard me say before as well. You said that to make it happen. But when you shift that, it allows you to have more open, transparent, honest conversations. It doesn't feel like a zero-sum game where you're fighting for the most your client can give you, and they're fighting for getting the least price, the lowest price for the most amount of work. Like it feels like you're on the same team. And I think that that's really helpful as you approach getting that money.
Totally. And what I love about this conversation with Erin is it's a little bit of kind of tactical, practical with some things that you can implement right away, as well as some conversations you probably need to have with yourself and your mindset and how the stories you tell. And so for anyone that, struggles with or is really trying to shift how they approach sales, especially in 2023, I think that you will very much enjoy this conversation with Erin Lindstrom. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Confessions with Jess and Cindy. It is my absolute honor and pleasure to introduce you to our guest today, someone that I have been a fan of both personally and professionally. We have Erin Lindstrom, who is just such a funny thing, like the internet. We became kind of Instagram friends. And then I love people who take the initiative to turn that into kind of real life friends when Erin invited me into something in person. And it was really important for me to have someone like Erin on our show because one thing that I think she does different than a lot of other coaches out in the world is sell. And for all of you consultants listening, I will speak on behalf of myself as well. The selling part of running our business can be challenging and uncomfortable and foreign. And Erin's take on how to do that with ease and with attention is is something I just hadn't heard before. And so I wanted to bring that conversation to the podcast today. So welcome, Erin, to Confessions. I hope you're ready to get confessional.
I'm ready to be in the confessional. Thank you so much for having me.
So, for folks who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your business and how you get paid?
Sure. So I'm Erin Lindstrom. I've been in the online business world for about 10 years now, which is like 100 years in internet time. And my business has seen all sorts of iterations and evolutions and all of that jazz. I call myself a sales strategist to keep things easy and flowing. To be honest with you, I do a few different things and I cross industries and I kind of break all of the rules. But at the end of the day, everything kind of comes down to growth, whether that's personally, professionally, or like revenue when it comes to your numbers for your business. So sales strategy to me encompasses like leadership as a piece of the puzzle, communications a piece of the puzzle, copywriting, and then sales strategy funnels, like it all, the whole puzzle. I need to look at it and talk with you about it. And I think that there's like our personal energy also affects all of that. So I do something that I call dynamic coaching. That's kind of a blend of coaching and consulting. A lot of times when I'm giving advice or when I'm asking questions, I'm kind of trying to zoom out and get different lenses on things from like strategy to mindset to healing. Because as we're running our own businesses, I find that you kind of need something from each one of those areas. And so that's what I do over here. That's how I get paid.
That is so clear, which I love. And I find so much value in how you frame that as, it's holistic. And I
Mhm.
feel like we should start the conversation with that. Because sales is one of those things. It's like fundraising, right? Where people just think, ugh, icky,
Yeah.
gross. And I think sales, when we're selling to nonprofits, that feeling is even more intensified. So tell us a little bit about how you approach that, even that first hurdle of like, yes, I'm willing to do this work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like for me, I've really connected like being of service and sales. And the way that I am like put together, whatever my operating system, business is, it feels like art to me. Like it's creative. I see it like this is fun. This is where I want to be. And when I kind of give myself the question of like, if you could do, like you have all the money in the world coming in for the highest good of all, ethically, um, how would you spend your time? It's like, this is how I would end up spending my time. So I've kind of like found my like center of like, I can't quit this because it comes up against like who I am without being like unhealthy and all I do is work. But however, like really my strengths lie here. And I think my purpose is very much like inside of my work. So with that understanding, I typically work for and with other people who feel the same way. Like they're doing something that they love. They are doing what's most important to them in the world. And in the nonprofit space specifically, most, at least I'll speak for the ones that like I've come in contact with, like most founders are like, this is their thing. Like this is what they care about. They are coming from that same like purposeful energy. And when I like kind of offer my services in that way to help, it is to be of service like to their purpose. So to me, it's like a different kind of energy exchange than just like, hi, can you give me 5,000? But like, can I have that? Like, it's not like that at all. It's very much like, how can I support you? And then what do I need to make that work like on this earth in this world? And my kind of like path to even getting to support nonprofits is a little bit like funky and it's not the way I planned it. Where I graduated from college with a degree in international affairs and elementary education, thinking like children, that's how we'll change the world. This is how we like get in. Schools are important. And then I started a master's in nonprofit management and I ended up quitting like a semester in. I loved the business stuff. I loved learning about like leadership in that context. And I was like, two things were happening. Number one, just kind of life stuff catching up with me. And like I was depressed and needed like to focus on myself for a minute. And on the other side of that, I was like doing the math. And as we were talking about business development, I was getting to know my peers who most of them were already in the nonprofit world. They were sharing like how much they were making and what they wanted to do. And when I started hearing those numbers, I was like doing the math and thinking like, oh my God, I'm going to be in so much debt forever. And like, I don't actually know if this is going to work for me in this way. And so I kind of hopped out at that moment to reconsider everything. And then as I went down the business growing path, I always had in my head, like, I truly want to help. Like, I would go down that path if that were possible, but it didn't feel possible to me. I ended up becoming pregnant and having 2 kids. And like, it literally wasn't sustainable to start at like a starting salary. So instead, I went on this other direction. And what kept coming up for me as I was like visioning for my business, like copywriting, so cool, whatever, helping people do things. But I kept having like the call in my heart of like, okay, but also this, like, I do care about children in the world. And like, what am I going to be doing about this? And so I was like, I need to do something right now. Reached out to a local organization to like, they had a holiday program where I like did a gifting thing. And that relationship with the founder, she came to my house because I kept, because I posted on social and said, hey, if anyone else wants to do this with me, send me the $75 and I'll go shopping for you. And I had like 19 people sponsor kids. So she was like, who are you? And like, can I trust you? And what is happening here? And when we met, she was like, okay, can we have an ongoing relationship? And I was like, yeah. And my relationship with that organization over the years shifted from volunteer and then into consulting for them. And so at first, like, we were talking about it openly, and I had a great relationship with the founder where I could be like, this is what I do. This is what it costs. And she was like, I love that. And nope, can't do it. And it took years of like really respecting each other's boundaries and like, here's what I can give. Like, I'd love to do this part of the project for you. I can do this. And then getting to the point where it's like, oh, okay, we can have a quarterly retainer for 10K. Great. Sign here. And then let's add these things. And so it's really evolved as the organization has grown. And then I've been able to support other organizations similarly because of the work that I did there.
That's awesome. And I think, I mean, as you know, our audience are consultants who serve nonprofits. So you help for profits and you have clients who are nonprofits, which I think is a space that more and more consultants are looking at is like, how do we straddle both audiences? I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that experience, how you manage that. Do you price things differently? What does it look like?
Yeah, great question. So this has kind of like developed organically for me as I was doing it. And in the beginning, I just wanted to serve and support, right? So I did do some things like for free and then moved into the paid packages. And I almost didn't care what it looked like in terms of my business clients versus my nonprofit client, because I only had one at the time. And so I could be like very particular about what I was doing in relationship to everything else. As that grew and I kind of like found my bearing and I started getting referrals because people would see what I was doing over there. I would meet them. They'd be on the board and like it kind of naturally like took over. I would price in a way that I kind of have like I feel like an inner algorithm almost where like I test things. So I will not make up, but I will consider, here's what I would charge outside of this realm. Do I really want to do this project? Is this aligned? How does it fit in with everything that's happening right now? Because sometimes there are variables and depending on what's on my plate, like things will change. But I'll make a decision like that. And ultimately what I've found is that I do charge most nonprofits my regular prices. The reason why is because like the first time that it was outside of this organization that it was happening, I was talking to a friend and colleague and I was like, I don't know. I was freaking out. Like, I don't know what to charge because like, I don't know if they have money and making up all the stories for them. And it was something where I like wanted to do it, but it wasn't like, I have to do this. This is it for me. And she was like, yeah, this is a $20,000 project. And I was like, what are you? I cannot, like, there's no way. And then I like went through and looked at it all again. And I was like, okay, but it is like, cause it's going to take that much time and energy. And like, I can't fit anything else on my schedule if I don't. So I ended up pitching, I think like 18,000 is where I like landed. And they were like, yeah, no problem. And I was like, oh,
Okay. Can we like rewind like 10 seconds? Because you, who is master of sales, even question the value in like, how do I charge these organizations? And I feel like, for someone who's already done the work, there's still mindset stuff that comes up. I mean, you had the numbers and you had their budget and it felt, even with all that, you still put your own brakes on. So how do we how do we figure out how to charge what we're worth or how to position ourselves, in a way that we're finding those clients that can invest because some can and some can't.
Yeah. Great question. So when I started that process, the first thing that I did that I didn't share was like, when I spoke to my friend and kind of like went back and forth because PS, I think like having space held by someone who can keep their feet on the ground when you're in your emotions is super important. Like whether it's a coach or just a friend who's like also in business and growing and stretching, that is like part one of this for me. And so what I did was before I even got to doing the work of the proposal, because I was like, I'm not taking the time to do this unless I know this is going to be more like this is going to work for me. So I sent the guy who was in charge of coordinating with me and getting the invoice a ballpark. And I was just like, hey, like before I go ahead and do this full proposal, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Like this is probably in the 15 to 20K range. And I thought when I sent that he would be like, oh no, sorry. And that would be off my plate. And I saved myself the work of the proposal. And instead he was like, yeah, that's what we were thinking. And I was like, okay. So I like to build in these like check-ins along the way for me or them. And so for me, that ballpark moment was important. And I think sometimes in sales, it gets very like, I don't want to say the number because what if I'm lowballing and what if they have a bigger budget? And also what if they don't have a budget? I'm like, just ask is like the biggest thing. Like I think being able to talk about numbers, and that's why my relationship with the founder I was talking about first is so like incredible and amazing and like has been able to grow is because we've always been clear with like what we can do. Like she's very much, I'm like, this is what I need. She's like, got it. Here's what's in the budget. Can we make it work? Can we not? Okay, what do we want to do instead? Like it's okay to kind of to be in the figure it out stage with someone. And I think knowing where your boundaries are going into any conversation help make that much easier. If I know that like I can't do this less for than 5,000, then that gives me a starting point of okay, let me ask up here, see what happens, and then I know like it's just a no when we get to that point, and that's okay.
Chef's kiss gold information. I want to step back a little bit and dive into the weeds on this evaluation, I don't know, vetting process. How do you make sure that before you get to the point of even maybe a conversation, you know, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat, that this person, has a budget at all or like that it's even worth your time. I think that that's a mistake that a lot of nonprofit consultants make is they want to be the nice guy, the nice girl, and they're willing to hop on a phone call with anyone. And that phone call turns into a consultation. The next thing you know, 90 minutes goes by. And then you come to the point of the conversation and they're like, actually, we were hoping you'd do this for free, or we would do this on commission, which is actually unethical. And you're like, wow, I just wasted a ton of time. So, what do you do in your business to vet people to make sure that before you're actually coming to this conversation around a budget, that they are, your right fit? Some people are willing to work with these super tiny startup nonprofits that don't have a big budget, and then others are absolutely not. So, I'm curious
Yeah.
what your process is.
So I feel like I'm in a situation where I've pretty much only done paid work, with the exception of the beginning. Like I just had right like that grew. But
Yeah, like
therefore, when
we
people
got into
refer
business to get
me,
paid.
right. And but therefore too, right, when people refer me, like they come with the expectation of paying me. And there's something to be said of like, yeah, don't always break the rule because then it's not the rule. You know what I mean? It very quickly becomes like what you do. And I think that like sales calls and consults are something to kind of like look at depending on like what kind of season of business you're in, you typically have like you need time or you need money. Maybe you need both, and then we have like an operational situation. But in the moments where like you need money and you have too much time, I think connecting is a really good way of kind of like getting your foot in the door and making connections, building your network, all of that jazz. In seasons where you're like, I have so much work, I need to make that fence higher against me. Cool, build the fence. And know that you can change that back and forth as you go. So in that season where you do have space and connections are important, and if you have a history of getting clients, of having good relationships in that way, I would say open that up. If you've never closed a sale, like then we have some things to discuss before we go back there. Number one, like asking people, like you have to be brave enough to ask and call out that it's awkward if it is. Just be like, I am so excited to be here with you today. Like after looking over your website, I think, the cause that you're for is amazing. Here's how it links to me. Before we get into everything, and I do want to hear everything, and the answer to this question doesn't even matter, but I just want to make sure, are you here in a kind of like volunteer aspect where you just kind of want some free feedback? Or are you thinking more of like a client commitment? And I can like start it like that. Also, like your website is a very important structure in kind of building the pre-structure for getting on that call, where you can kind of lay out my packages start from here, or this is what I offer. Like really by the time they get to the call, the question that I just gave you shouldn't really exist. In my opinion, like we should know what's happening at that point. And if you don't, then feel free to send an email. And if you don't have an application that like gives you some information, but you're allowed to ask pre-questions. Like it's never bad for you to be gathering information before a call. It just makes you look like you're prepared and like taking the time to get ready to go. And so I think asking too, like, on whether it's application or in an email, what do you have a budget in mind for what you're looking to do?
I love that. Those are such great examples. And for anyone listening that's like, oh gosh, I'm really behind the eight ball, like this is actually one of my to dos over the next month. I don't even have a proper form that vets people on my website. And it's resulted in a ton of people reaching out that I know aren't a great fit from the get go. And so luckily I have my Rolodex. So I have a ready pool of people I can refer out to. But even I can do a much better job of vetting people before they come to me. So if you haven't done that yet, like you're all good. Like there's
Mhm.
plenty of time. Hey Erin, we're back for another round of rapid fire questions. Are you ready to play?
I am excited. I don't know if I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, cool. What is the first thing you drink in the morning?
Water.
Oh, so
Yeah, usually to
healthy.
wash down an Adderall.
I know that you sideline as a comedian. Who is your favorite comedic inspiration?
That's a great question. I like don't know. I'm gonna go with Amy Poehler because I was just watching Parks and Rec, and because she has like the nonprofit side,
What do you mean? I don't even
Smart
know.
Girls, I believe it's called.
Oh, I don't even know. I've got to go look that up.
Side fact,
Mhm.
I think improv is an incredible tool for fundraisers
Agreed.
and business owners. And Amy Poehler, I obviously is in the School of Improv, and I can't remember all the details of that, but like it is such an important the whole yes and all of it, such an
Totally.
important skill set.
Yep.
And none of this is rapid fire, but I actually think that being funny or comedic abilities is a huge sign of intelligence. Every
Mm.
single really funny person I know is very, very, very brilliant. So, Erin.
Interesting.
Okay, if I know you live in Virginia, if someone is coming to town, where are you taking them to lunch, brunch, coffee? Where's your go-to spot?
I love this. Okay, we're gonna go probably grab a coffee or a lavender mocha at Cafe Stella. And then we're gonna like go for a beautiful walk downtown. And I'm skipping to dinner, but we're gonna go to Codex for dinner. It's gonna be so good. And maybe for lunch we'll get shawarma. Yeah. It's gonna be a great day. We're gonna eat a
Oh,
lot. We're gonna see some
oh,
water, see a big boat, you know?
I love it. And my last question, because I know you embrace the woo. So, what is your sign, your enneagram, your energy? Like, what do you
Or
subscribe
get to
to?
know
Tell
me
us
in that
what you
way.
are.
I'm an Aquarius, Capricorn rising, Capricorn, whatever the other important one is. Ascendant? No, that's rising. Moon. I'm moon. Okay, moving on. Aquarius, Capricorn, Capricorn. I'm an Enneagram 3. I'm in human design. I'm a generator 1-3 with the some angle cross of contagion, which is like that good cult leader energy. Um, but that's what how to use it ethically, Important. I think those are all the ones I can think of off the top of my head.
Amazing. All right, you're the best. Thanks for playing.
My pleasure.
I feel like I'm working all the way backwards in this conversation, but I think people confuse getting leads with sales.
Mhm.
They think that getting leads is selling. And so then I see a lot of trepidation around even putting yourself out there, getting visible, letting people know what it is you actually do so they can know how they would possibly work with you. And I'm just curious if that's ever come up in your consulting with like for me, that screams mindset, but you're the expert. So maybe not. Like, how do you coach people through showing up and then crossing over into the sale, because I
Mhm.
think people in this industry struggle with both.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just having a conversation with a nurse the other day who's like stepping into coaching. And I think the helper space and historically women, right, like stepping into the more powerful. And if I may, for a second, I have a soapbox like around nonprofit stuff that like makes me want to rip the hair out of my head. Because nonprofits, right, were created like during wars, the women had something to do and there was money coming in, so they didn't need to get paid. So we have this female dominated industry where like money is like we can ask for money, which PS I need two separate things. I need a high donor strategy to be like, we've got this. And then I need to go not beg people, but like sometimes I think that's what people don't want it to feel like, right? And kind of like the grassroots method. So there's a lot of money stuff and power stuff, I think, to talk about in the nonprofit world that all gets kind of like up in here. And so when we think about like the sales stuff, number one, I think it's an interesting exercise for everyone to kind of like connect the dots between your service and money. Even if that's not what you're leading with, that's not how you're selling it, like, but to have the backbone understanding of, well, we do this, I do social media, lead generation, right? But ultimately, like, then you need to convert into donations or whatever the action is there. I think like everyone in business, you are a salesperson in some way, shape, or form. So whatever comes up around sales, number one, I think like noticing what is there for you, just thinking about that and what comes up for you around asking for money, what comes up for you around wages and like what's right. Like there's so many pockets that money fits into. And the first thing is just getting really curious about like what's even there for me. And then like getting clear on like what are your actual values and beliefs around this. I think being clear that you believe that people should be paid for their work, like that applies for you too. And it makes it a little bit less awkward when you're asking. I have a lot of different things. One of the things that I'm working on is like a comedy organization and like a theater company. And I believe performers should be paid. It is super awkward to have like a high ticket show almost when I pitch like local restaurants because they're like, that's a lot of money. I'm like, yeah, it's this much work plus this much marketing. So it breaks down to about $15 per person. Like, and I know that your values are this. So like, how do I connect the values to everything? And like my business is a part of that, like getting people paid. And I think when you're solopreneuring and kind of in the early days of no team to then growing a team potentially, for some people, it feels easier to like ask for the sale because I'm providing for my team, where it's almost uncomfortable when people know that it's like going to you. And like, that's okay. Like, this is still business. So the value of your service, I think on earth, you can get really clear on that, like dollar to dollar, like, what are you going to see? How much am I saving you in time? How much more money will you be bringing in based on this work? Is one piece of it. And then on the other side of that, there's the value piece of like, you actually can't charge your worth because like your worth is infinite, regardless of your work. So like there's room to like lean into these things and like try them on and pull strengths from where you can pull strengths. And then I think it's kind of a Venn diagram situation where we got to find the middle of like, okay, based on what I believe, this is what I would tell someone else to do. How does that feel for me? Do I have the confidence to go and do that? And if the answer is no, there's one of two things that you likely need. One is like more information. So like getting more strategic around like, how does your service actually pay off? Sometimes doing the thought work of really pulling that out for yourself, not even the client, will change things. And then the other side is like belief. And is it belief in you and your ability to do it? And typically when you check that, we're like, oh no, I can do it. Like, maybe it's not that right. And then it's like the ability of having a functional relationship, which sounds silly. However, if I'm partnering with a nonprofit, their results become our results to a certain extent, right? Like they're not mine technically. However, I care how they do now, and I'm fully like I'm acting as if I'm responsible for this. I'm going to do my best. You can't, in our lives, you've probably had a situation where you couldn't trust the other person to do their best. If you've ever had a group project in school, like all of that leaves residual like trauma shit that's like now hanging out. And this is where the healing part comes in. Is like sometimes you have to actually think about that. Like, did you ever like sometimes working with the client, especially in consulting, you're boss to boss instead of boss to employee. And like, what does that look like? Who are you as a boss? Do you feel confident having a conversation from that angle? There's just like power shifts that are internal that then show up externally. So you kind of got to look at it all. We need to do another Zoom out.
All of it. Um, just so many things you said there. I took notes because they're showing up. I know for a lot of people. I just had this conversation with someone in my network who I had to remind them that they're the expert, that they were hired, they're not an employee of this company, that they are a consultant and an expert. And you're not talking to your boss, you're talking to your client. And another client of mine, another coaching client, has had so many bad experiences with bosses that she's self-sabotaging becoming a boss and building her team because she doesn't want to be like those people. And then, I mean, going back a little bit, just a lot of what you're saying to me speaks of openness and transparency, like asking for budget, putting information on forums, asking for information. And I think that you mentioned sort of like, well, we're asking, I think a lot of people feel I'm asking for me, right? I'm the business and it feels really uncomfortable. But when you start to build in that transparency and approach it from a service perspective, where I'm not here to extract all the money from nonprofits, I'm here as a partner, as someone who wants to help them do good. It definitely shifts that mindset piece. I really want to talk about copy as well, because I definitely think that but I want to talk about everything.
We can talk about it all. I'll come back for more confessions.
Yes. I feel like we could literally do like a whole series on all the areas that you cover. Because okay, let's talk about copy and funnels a little bit because I think that people also get really stuck in the weeds and the shoulds of the weeds. So I need to have this, I need to have that. And so I'd love for you to talk, let's set the stage a little bit about like where do we use copy? Where do we use funnels? What is important? What maybe is a nice to have or depends on your strategy, kind of set the overall stage for us.
Okay, great. I will set the stage and then you're going to have to draw me back with questions because then like, oh, here we go. One thing from the last thing you were saying that's going to connect right into the copy is like ROI is what was in big gold letters in my head as you were kind of just speaking through everything there. Being able to connect to your ROI is huge and your copy is a huge piece of this. Your copy to me, number one, copy is the words that are in your marketing. It is what's on a billboard. It is what's in your email campaign. It is your Instagram bio. It is your caption. Like any words that you're seeing, that is copy. I did not know that. I came into this world. I learned that in B school. Thanks, Marie Forleo. Which that's not a go by it by any means. That is just where I was 10 years ago. Okay.
Love it.
That aside, like, because this was like my whole nonprofit journey. Like, I didn't know you could make money writing. No idea. Communication is so important, right? And so as a consultant, even if you are a one-person show or if you are a multi-person show, whatever it is, your brand is really like your vibe. It is your energy. And when you're one person, if you think about it like a networking event, it's like who you are when you walk in the room. Are you the person, and no shade to any of the style things I'm about to throw out, but like, are you the person who's like, walking in with like an elaborate hat and people are like, oh my God. And she's like confidently talking to everyone. Are you the person who's like walking in like a smart suit situation? Like what is your vibe? And I like to think of that in and outside of like, not just outfit, but it is like your ability to communicate and to manage energy back and forth between people. Are you someone where like, everyone's like, oh my God, that was so fun? Or like, oh my God, like my mind has been blown. Or like what kind of effect or imprint do you want to have, I think is important. And then where do you think you are? And we can grow all of that stuff. To me, your copy is a form of that. Because like sometimes I will read a caption and like your outfit no longer matters at this point. The photo, I don't care. The reel, I don't care. When I read that caption, there's tone that's really important. And there's like the way that you ask for things and share things. The tone and like all this kind of comes together in one big meatball, if you will. So there's like a lot of things smashed in there, but I care about the tone and the energy of how you are transferring information. That is like the intention behind it, right? And like you can hear things differently. If you read a website, start looking at them, right? Start reading captions differently as a business owner and see like, does this person sound confident? Do I believe what they're saying? Did I learn something? And the call to action. Were they scared to give the call to action? Did they like, was it clear? Do I know what to do? Because those things that end up in your copy that are kind of passive, or people think of them as passive, they're actually quite active when engaged with, or at least that's what they're designed to be. And that is the same energy of like a conversation. So you want your copy, in my mind anyway, to be conversational and to bring that vibe so that people want to engage and talk to you. So that's kind of like the litmus test that I'm doing on everything. And so when it comes to like what you actually need, in a way, you need nothing. If you can have a conversation and be in connection, great, you've done it. Like if I can pass you a card and have a meeting in person, I need an invoice processor. Great, you can get away with absolutely nothing. However, you're going to need to know what to say to them in terms of what you do, what you provide, who you are, where they can learn more. And a lot of times, it's helpful to just write that down to get really clear on what it is, to have a script and then throw it away, to know that you're intentional around like what's coming out of your mouth. And so that people can go have another touch point with you that doesn't require you speaking to them. But that said, I think it's important to kind of check in with what's easiest for you, which feels most natural. Some of my clients are like, I can write all day. Other people are like, I don't want to write, but I'll do a video. And I'm like, okay, great. Let's start at the access point of what's most fun to you. And then we can translate that into the words.
I love that. And I think I actually learned this from you, to think of your copy as like an attraction method or an attraction tool, because that will help bring your ideal clients to you. I want to carry further Cindy's question and go into funnels a little bit. I think that is like a foreign word to probably a lot of people in the consulting space, even though we've done funnels in our
Right.
nonprofit world, we just have named them different things. And so I'm just curious how you, for someone who's maybe just getting started with funnels, and this could be like to something free or to just onboard people, like where do you advise people to start? And if
Okay.
there was like one funnel, you're just like, you should probably have that one in your business. Like,
Okay.
which one would it be?
Would you count a website as a funnel?
I would.
Okay. I'm going to argue for that as my one thing. If I could only have one thing, I would go with a one-page website, because anything I do on social, anything I do in network, like I need somewhere to send people. So I'm going to probably send them there. I could do this with just an Instagram too, now that I'm thinking through. And then I would want to have my two softwares, an email situation where I can professionally email people, and a calendar link for me. And I think that's like an added value of book a call with me versus let's go back and forth with calendars. Like your sales process is the energy of working with you. So like if efficiency is important to you in working with someone, make your sales process feel like that too. But that's really it, is have a one-page thing that says, this is who I am. This is how I help. Here's some results that I've had in the past. Here's your next step to work with me. Then if you want to like add value, create a thing, we can add all of that. But ultimately, like go learn about me and then take action.
Love it. It's so simple. And I especially, and this goes back almost to what we talked about right at the very beginning when we were talking about like forms and stuff like that. You can build all of that into just those three things that you said, right? Like you can create a form in Calendly where you
Right.
ask those questions and funnel people, and then email. Do we want to talk a little bit about email marketing generally speaking? Because we're talking about email capture a little bit. And that's actually something I just came up with some of the people I coach, is like, do I need to do a blog? Do I need to do a weekly thing? I feel like there's increasing debate. I feel like it used to be like, you have to show up every week for your
Yes.
audience. Where do you stand on that?
I stand in the corner of breaking all the rules once again. So here's like ideal scenario. You have a shit ton of money in your bank account and you have so much time and freedom that you can just provide value all day long and create a content system and do everything and take care of your clients, and everything works really well. For most of us, like that's not totally doable. So I think you have to kind of filter that to where you are, what's available, what your strengths are. So for me, over the years, like I have a couple funnels that are set up and they've just been on like, haven't done a ton to do more. I focus more on showing up and like serving live, and I typically convert from what I'm doing in that way. So you kind of learn over time, like what's best for you. That said, I think having at least one like structural thing that is in place to um, gather emails and then to nurture that list absolutely makes sense. Um, as far as the nurturing goes, I think this is really specific to who you are and exactly how you're helping. Because, for example, like one of my clients who runs a nonprofit, she's very anti emails, like sending to her people. And like, so that's a thing I'm overcoming with her in terms of like stretching. That said, if I were sending her emails all the time, she would have gotten rid of me so long ago or never reached out, I think, because that wasn't the strategy to connect with her. So it really depends on the person you're trying to connect with. If it's someone on the team, like what are their functions? What are they doing? Are they going to creep into a funnel? Great. Are they someone who would rather watch a video? Are they someone who needs an ebook? Like, how can I create the material that that person needs? And then the follow up, I think it's important to be intentional with that as well. So if you have something valuable to share, absolutely, like that is generous to share in that way. If you are only reaching out because you need a sale and it's like thirsty energy, like, no thanks, skip that email. You know what I mean? Do something else instead. Serve in a more one-to-many way and then like bring it back. Because I do think emails are personal. And so I do think it matters what goes in there without needing to have like a full newsletter with 80 different topics. Like it's more to me from the heart and purposeful. So if you can like broadcast from the heart, great, do it. And if you can do that consistently, great, do it. Great idea.
I love that. So simple. Again, this has been so helpful, Erin. Thank
So
you.
glad.
So, for folks who are listening and they're like, I need some more Erin in my life, what is the best way to get in touch with you and follow you and be in your world?
Be in my world. Oh, that was not good singing. My world lives mostly Instagram is where I show up live. So at Erin Lindstrom. My website's erinlindstrom.com. I have a LinkedIn somewhere too. That's Erin Lindstrom. So wherever you are, say hi. Yeah, and happy to help. So if you have questions, something to me, and I'll create content to answer those questions specifically, like no problem.
And we didn't even talk about this, but Erin also has developed with some partners a tool that I think is genius called Let's Collect. Do you want to share about that just a tad? Because I think for this audience, it would
Yeah.
be really attractive.
Yeah. So Let's Collect is a software, particularly for people who are relationship focused. So none of this like salesy, sleazy win deal. Blah. So relationship centered and are using your social media platforms to close sales in the DMs. So we are currently finishing up like a development project. This is a whole nother story time. But anyway, we're finishing up a development project. We're going to be going live launch early 2023. And so if you are someone who is talking to people, nurturing leads, and then bringing people into the DMs to have conversations and move into either a sales call or just to share opt-ins and share value, but want to be able to like measure what's actually working, then that would be for you.
It's awesome. It's beautiful. It's easy to use. Erin, thank you so much for joining us on Confessions. We really appreciate it. And everyone else, we will speak to you soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for doing this work.
Thank you again for listening to the Confessions podcast for nonprofit coaches and consultants. If you enjoyed today's episode, which I sure hope you did, you can show your support in one of three ways.
Number one, post a screenshot of this episode to your Instagram stories or LinkedIn profile and tag Cindy and I so we can repost you.
Number two, share this podcast with a fellow nonprofit coach or consultant.
And number three, leave a positive review on Apple Podcasts so we can continue to grow and reach new listeners.
And of course, make sure you subscribe so you can get the latest and greatest interviews as they drop every Thursday.
And to our fellow nonprofit coaching and consulting friends, remember, we're an open book and here to answer your burning biz questions.
See you next time.